Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to Waterhouse Forde. We have a special guest today. Kathy's wanted to come down and join us for today's video, so welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
So, it's been a while since you were in the workshop. What made you come today?
Where do you think I'm after something?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I'll tell you later.
Okay.
I just thought it'd be interesting. It's end of the year, and it's been a good year. Well, it's been a challenging year, but a good year, and I just thought it'd be nice to make an appearance and for people to see me and say hi, really.
Cool. Very good. So, what are we going to do today?
I don't know. What are we going to do?
Okay, so in today's video, again, I don't think it'll be a very long one, but in today's video what we're going to do is take the two steering arms and replace the ball joints on either end. So it's not a big job, a couple of little interesting points as you're going along, and just a couple of things to think about whilst you're doing it. But normally you'd be doing, well, typically you'd be doing this job essentially with them on the tractor. Of course, ours are not on the tractor, and so we have the luxury of being able to do it in the vase, which will make it a little bit easier. But yeah, so we're just going to step through that and see how we go.
Okay, let's do it.
Cool. Okay, now before we get started, we'll talk a little bit about these arms. So the first thing to note is that the ball joints are at 90 degrees to each other. So that one's pointing down and that one's obviously pointing in like that. This is the one that connects to the drop arm from the steering box. No, sorry, I lie. This is the one that's connected to the pitman arm on the spindle, and this is the one that's connected to the steering box on the the drop arm on the steering box. And the reason I know that is because this one, if I can show you, get the angle right, if you can see, that pin is essentially at 90 degrees to the shaft. Now if I turn it around, you'll see that that is not at 90 degrees, so it's sort of kicked out this way. And that is where it goes in and it connects to the, if I put it this way, when it connects to the drop arms are much narrower than the two pitman arms on the steering axle. So this one needs to be kicked out in order to push the shaft this way in order to get the angle right. So you need to be conscious when you're putting them on. One side needs to be non-90 degree and the other side needs to be the 90 degree. The other thing to note is that inside this is a hollow tube which is threaded, and these thread into it, and we'll see that now in a minute when we take them apart. One side is a left-hand thread, a normal thread, and the other one is, one is a left-hand thread and the other side is a normal thread, a right-hand thread. And I'll show you why that is as we get towards the end of the video. But
Can I just hold this really close to the camera? Because I mean, I know nothing about these things, but looking at this, get a real close up. Right. If that was my ball joint in my body, I think I'd be feeling that. It looks really wonky. Should it be like that? Wonky. Do you know what I mean? Look on that side. You see how it looks like it's been under pressures that it shouldn't have been under.
So that's a rubber boot.
Oh,
and that rubber
okay.
boot has been deformed, yeah.
Yes, that's not actually metal.
No, and
Okay.
inside there's grease.
Yeah. I've got that on my fingers now.
Okay, now again, before we go any further, let's just quickly talk about the replacement kit. So this is the kit that you get from Anglo. It's part number 868282, and it contains all four of the ball joints, so basically what you need to be able to do both steering arms. And again, when we open it up in a minute, we should hopefully find that two of them are at 90 degrees and two of them are a bit more than that. It's probably about 100 and, I don't know, maybe 110 degrees I would estimate. But yeah, so we're going to open that up. Well, first of all, we're going to strip that one, and then we're going to open this up, and we'll get the new ones fitted. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so to start, what we want to do is get this. I'm going to reset the camera, but we want to get this clamp off here. Like I said, this is a hollow tube. It's got thread inside, but it also has a slit here, which I can just see. You won't see it on the camera yet, but you'll see it in a minute. And this clamp basically squeezes that tight so that these can't move. So once you've got them set, you would clamp them tight. So I think that looks like a 1/2" spanner, so let me get one of those and then we'll get started. Okay, so we've got some spanners. So do you want to have a go at trying to take these off?
Yeah, which do you suggest?
So this is a 1/2" on both sides. This one is a 1/2" on this side and a 9/16 on that side.
What
So you're going to use that
1/2".
one. So this is a 1/2". So you want that on there and that one on
Oh.
here to hold it.
Okay. Kind of like that.
Yeah,
Which way does it go?
that way.
That way. Ah,
That's it.
that's not too bad.
No.
Slow and steady as she goes.
Okay, now you don't have to
So I
take
can
it all
now-
the way out, so that's enough.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
Don't want it coming off.
no.
Okay.
So now what we want to do, that is now painted and whatever onto the shaft, so we want to just give it a tap, just to loosen it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then it should slide off. Actually, before we do that, let's put that back actually. Okay, now we've got to get, you see there's a flat there,
Yeah.
flat edge, and there'll be one on the other side. What we want to do is get a spanner on there and twist this out.
Right.
Okay. Now I'm not entirely sure what size that is. It might be an 11.
Okay. After some searching, we found one that fits.
What size is it? There.
7/8.
No, that
Oh.
way. That side.
I can't read that.
25, 30
Oh.
seconds.
25/32. Which way am I going, that way?
I think so. Try that.
Is it meant to get tighter or looser?
It'll vary.
It'll vary.
Well, it depends what's going on inside the thread.
Oh, okay.
But it looks to me like it's coming out, not going in, so that's the right choice. Yeah.
That's getting a lot easier.
You might be able to do it by hand now.
You want me to put my hands on that greasy thing? I'll let you do that, shall I?
You can't be in the workshop and not get full of grease.
Look at the state of your hands, though.
Exactly.
I've got a white dog up there. I'm not. I wouldn't risk getting any of that on his coat. I mean, obviously, I'd wash my hands, but you know.
Okay, and
You
so
like
go
grease.
on.
You're the best person for that job.
Yeah. You can see how really old and tired that's supposed to be flexible rubber.
Wow.
It's actually hurting my hand as it's coming. It's so sharp. So, what's the word? Not rigid. Brittle.
Brittle. Perished.
Okay. So we'll turn. So there you go. There's your knuckle or your ball joint. And as I said, you can see this is the 90-degree one. That would go onto the axle side or onto the half shaft. Sorry, the pitman arm on the steering on the axle. So
Can I
There
get
we
the
go.
new one out just to show?
yeah. Okay, so there's the old one that's come out, and you can see this is the one that has the 90 degrees. So this is the one that connects to the pitman arm on the steering on the front axle.
And this is the new one, 491-12, and it's got a split pin with it as well. And it's much shinier and cleaner. So I can touch this one. Okay.
Okay, now before you take that away, let's just quickly talk about this one as well. So the first thing you'll notice is that there's no grease nipple on this one. So these are basically permanently greased. And as you can see, we've also got these spring wire clamps, connectors on the end of either end of the rubber boot. Now, I don't know whether you've noticed it, but often when you're greasing these, you basically overfill it, and the rubber boot pops off, and you may not notice, and then of course dust and stuff can get into it. Whereas what they've done here, this is basically permanently greased, and they've put spring steel wire clips on it to keep them firm.
So those bits around there.
Yeah.
And there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. All right. We'll just put that back to protect the thread whilst we carry on. Okay, so that's one side. Now, normally you wouldn't bother taking this clamp off, but I'm going to, because I want to get this all nicely cleaned up. I want to clean the slot and make sure that everything is working properly and nicely cleaned. Okay, there we go. So you can see a lot of dirt in there. I'm going to turn it here now. Now there you can see the slot that allows that clamp to squeeze this part ever so gently. But as you can see, it's full of dirt and probably a bit of paint and stuff, which means that it's not really going to clamp it very well. So a huge amount of dirt in there. So we'll get that all cleaned up. And also clean the threads inside and make sure that that is nice before we put it all back together. So right, now we go to the other side and we basically repeat the process. So 1/2 inch, that's that one there.
Yeah.
And hold that, there you go.
Oh, so I'm working this side this time.
Yeah, so it's going to go this way now. Might do it on top rather than you've got more space too. There you go.
It didn't seem to want to go
Yeah,
on
it's a bit
so
of
easily.
paint. Yeah.
That feels like it's getting tighter. I don't know.
Yeah, the paint is getting into the threads and tightening it. Let me hold this side for you.
Thank you. Blimey, all this effort to get this little thing off. It's getting tighter, honestly.
Okay, that's
so
fine. It's
getting
actually probably loose enough.
Okay.
Okay, so now we want to try and get this thing off again. Now this one is going to go the opposite way. Remember I said we've got a left hand thread and a right hand thread. But interestingly, this also doesn't have any flat edges on it, so that's going to be an interesting challenge.
It's definitely made it looser, right? Not tighter.
It's loose, look.
Okay. So it's just the reason I ask is that this collar thing that's going around here
Hasn't
looks really
moved,
tight
yeah.
to the
Yeah.
pole, whatever you call it, to the arm. Okay.
You just loosen it to make sure.
I think it was painted,
Yeah.
joined up with paint.
Okay, so the interesting thing is this has not got, you've got nothing really to grip onto in order to turn it. So I think what we're going to have to do, just turn that over, and we're going to have to just use this as a lever. Now it doesn't matter on an old one, because if you damage the threads or anything like that, on a new one you wouldn't want to do that, which is why you want to make sure that your threads inside this pipe are really nice and clean before you start putting your new one on. Now, as I said, this is a left-hand thread, so it's going to come off the other way. So if this was a normal thread, we would turn it this way to remove it. So we know we need to turn that way instead to turn it. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this by hand. If not, I'll have to get a pipe or something onto it. No. Okay, so let me find a pipe or a big spanner actually.
Oof.
Yeah, so very tight. Now we can see that that's obviously the vise is starting to damage the shaft, so we need to find a different way of doing this. Okay, so we're struggling a little bit to get this one off. What I'm going to do is remove this clamp completely. I'm going to use the impact for that. And I'm going to just open this clamp up a bit. I really just want to get it out of the way, completely out of the way, so that we can heat and sort of bang on this section here to try and loosen things up a bit. Right, so that's out of the way now. So we'll give this a couple of taps. And we'll get some heat on it.
You've got to be careful not to touch that now, right?
Yeah.
And remember that it's hot.
Okay, so now we'll see if we can get this to move either in or out.
Oh.
It's turning in the vase again.
No, it's still turning it.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is get these. We're going to get a pipe wrench on this.
You get the big boys out.
Okay.
Can I do anything to help?
No. Okay, we're definitely going to need more heat. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to heat it again, and I'm going to put try and get some penetrating oil into this hole, and that hopefully will help it to come.
You can actually see that now. You see
Yeah.
inside.
Okay, that's very hot now.
Oh, it smells stinky.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Okay, next plan is we'll put it in the vase, put the knuckle in the vase and see if we can turn the pipe using the shifting span, the pipe wrench. Okay. There we go. Okay, finally we managed to get it loose. Bit of heat, bit of smacking, bit of brute force, but we can see that that thread is going to need some work on this pipe, or in this pipe. There we go. Now, before I go any further, what I like to do is to mark the pipe so I know which side had the left hand thread and which side had the right hand thread. Ultimately, when you come to put it back together, you can't get it wrong, right? One side will go in, one side won't. But you do know, or we know, that the left hand thread is the one that's got the 110 degree, if it's that, it's about 110 degree angle on the ball joint. Right, okay, so now we move to cleaning, lots of cleaning, getting everything sorted out, and then we'll come back and put the new ones on. Okay, so the cleaning is done, or as much as we're going to do. Now, the thing to note here, I've put two pock marks, hopefully you can see them there. So that signifies this is the side that's got the left hand thread, and therefore is the one that needs to take the sort of kicked out knuckle. Before we go any further though, we must remember to put our brackets back on. Now these brackets, I've sandblasted them because they were a bit mucky, and unfortunately I haven't got the correct size bolts at the moment, so I'm going to be putting back the old bolts, but for the purpose of the video, but I'm actually going to replace these bolts and nuts before we finish up, or before it goes back on the tractor. To get those out of the way, I'm just going to pop them on the other side of the vase. But also what I want to do is I want to turn this now so that a slot is at the top. It's not important, but because I want to talk through a couple of things as we're going. Right, so we know this is the side that needs to take the non-90 degree knuckle, and when you take that thread protector off, you can see that thread looks strange. Well, hopefully it looks strange to you. It certainly looks strange to me. Before we go any further, what I want to do is put some grease on this thread, because we want this to be very well lubricated initially and all the way, essentially as much as we can, all the way through its life, or its service life. You don't need a heck of a lot, but we want to put a fair amount on so that the threads get nicely lubricated as this is going in. That should do. Now, I don't know about you, but I always struggle with left hand threads. Now normally if I wanted to tighten, I'd have to turn this way, so I know now I'm going to basically turn this way instead. and hopefully I can get that to thread. There we go. Okay. Now what you want to do in the first instance is take this in basically as far as it'll go. And the main reason for that is to get the threads nicely lubricated. You spread that grease all the way through as you're going. Now some of this grease is squeezing out. I'm going to pop that in the slot there. And we keep going. Because this is a threaded pipe, the threads are not brilliant, because obviously through its life this pipe will come under stresses and strains, and it will, shall we say, deform or malform over time. And in any case, because it's got these two slots in it, it's you know, it's not going to be a perfectly round object all the time. So you kind of have to live with the fact that this thread is just not going to be optimal. I've cleaned it up as much as I could. I don't have a left-hand tap, so I wasn't able to tap it, but I've used a small wire brush that would go in there initially, put lots of lubricant in there, and ran a cloth up and down, twisted it in and out, and then cleaned up the thread on the old knuckle and ran that in and out a couple of times, and you know, that was running nicely, or as nice as I could get it, let's say. Okay, we're almost there now. Now, as I say, the reason I'm going all the way in is because I want to get grease onto that thread as much as I can. Right, so that's now hit the end of the thread, it would seem. Now, what you want to do now is you want to take that back, and I would, you know, I'm just going to estimate roughly the thickness of my thumb for now. Maybe a little bit less than that, actually. I'm going to say the thickness of my finger. I suppose we could actually measure it. Let's measure it. Okay, so where are we now? We're currently at hang on, let's try zeroing that. It's 11.6, let's go a little bit more. I think I'm looking for about 15, maybe 16 millimeters. So we'll go one more turn. There we are, we're just about on 16.9. I'm going to leave it there, 16.9 millimeters. Let's call it 17. Okay, now the reason, what I'm talking about here is basically when you put the other side in, you want it to be the same width, open or exposed thread, let's call it. And the idea is that when you get this, and I mentioned at the start of the video, I was going to explain why we've got a left-hand thread and a right-hand thread on each side of this pipe. The idea is that when this is on the tractor, and that's fixed, right? So that's actually, and in fact, I'm going to turn that quarter turn, because that's going to be fixed on the what do you call it, the drop arm, the steering drop arm, right? So that's going to be there like that. And actually we want that, what we want to do is we want those slots to not be facing upwards if we can help it, right? More importantly, when that side is fixed and when the other side is fixed onto the front of the steering, and you need to adjust the tracking on your wheels, what you want to be able to do is loosen these two clamps and twist this pipe and have the arm open or close, it lengthen or shorten. And having a left hand thread and a right hand thread, one on either side, basically gives you that extending or so opening or closing type action. So that's why you've got a left and a right thread on here, and why it's important. Right, so that's that one. Now what we can do is get the clamp back. Now, as I said, we know that this one is going to be, let's call it at 90 degrees like this. What we want is we want to put the clamp on so that the bolt and nut is at the bottom. And in this case, what I've got is I've got the nut at the back, what will be the front, and that's not how I want it. So I'm going to turn that around. So what I want is I want the bolt on the outside of the tractor and the nut on the inside, and that may seem illogical or counterintuitive, but the reason for that is you want to protect the nut as much as possible from the rain and the wind and, well, just the rain and sand and dust and whatever else. So okay, so what we can do now is we can just nip that up. We're not going to tighten it too much, because we know that when we come to putting the tractor together, putting the steering together, we're going to want to tighten this up. We're going to want to adjust the track of the tractor, i.e. of the front wheels. So we know we're going to have to adjust this again. And I'm going to get lazy and use the impact for this. So just about there. There we go. Let's maybe just turn that a little bit. There. Just so it doesn't move. Right, so that's now fixed. So we can now turn this shaft around and do the other side. Now, we know that we've got to be careful about our orientation. Well, we just need to be aware of our orientation here. So that knuckle that we've just put on, you can't see it on the camera, but it's currently pointing, shall we say, inwards. So it's pointing that way. So we know that the knuckle that we put on this side needs to be pointing down. Obviously you can adjust it later, you can move them, you can do all those things, but I wanted to essentially try and mimic what we're going to be doing on the tractor so that you can see it. Right, so first thing is to get our clamp in, and this one's a little bit tight. Just open that up a bit. Okay, and again we want the nut and bolt towards the bottom, and this time we're going to put the bolt head that way, because this is the tractor's on this side. Put our spring washer and our nut on. Remember, I'm going to be replacing these bolts anyway, so these are just temporary and essentially just for the video. Okay, so that's the right orientation. Now we bring in the new knuckle. and again grease the thread. I'll try and put a little bit inside there as well. Okay, and now this time it's the normal thread, so we know we can turn it normally to tighten. Again, we'll just pop some grease into those slots just to feed it in, so that it's hopefully getting into those threads at the back, at the end of the pipe. Squeezing it while I'm pushing it in. It's getting a bit tighter now. Just about there now. There we are, and that one's gone all the way in. Okay, so now we want to come out our, what was it, 16.9, call it 17. Get rid of some of this grease now. You don't want to leave too much grease around, because obviously that will attract dust and dirt. So we want to clean it up, clean up the exposed grease, if you see what I mean. We really just want the grease inside. Okay. Now the reason why you want to measure this, and the reason why we want this to be equal, is there's no mechanical reason for it, or technical reason. It's purely cosmetic. But it sort of makes sense as well, because what you want is, you want to be able to adjust this by turning the pipe and know that you're not going to run out of thread on one side, that you're not going to lose what's the word, space, I suppose. Okay, right, so let's measure this one, see if we can get this thing to come on again. My battery is a bit dodgy on there. Okay, so we're at 12, so we'll come out a bit more. That's 18, so we'll go in one. $17.2. Going in one is going to be too much, I think. 16.15. We're going to go. I'm going to leave it there at 17.2, which, you know, I mean, it's to the eye, it's probably the same. And that's it, basically. So we can now tighten this up. Again, just a little nip just to keep it in place. There we go, just like that, and that's it. Now that's pretty much it. Now, as I say, when you come to putting this back on the tractor, what you're going to do is you're going to, let me just zoom the camera out a bit. You're going to have the two, you still can't see the whole thing. Well, anyway, look, you're going to have, if you can imagine, this is going to be fixed, this is a fixed point. You're going to turn your pipe, and that's going to either lengthen or shorten this here. It's doing the exact same on the other side and by the same amount. So that means that your arm in total is going to get longer or shorter depending on which way you turn your pipe, and that is how you adjust the toe in essentially on the front wheels. And when you're doing it, and I'll probably do a video on it when we get to that stage, but essentially what you're doing is you're adjusting both sides equally, and that's why it's important really to know that you've got all four of these lengths as close to the same as you possibly can, with the knuckles being in the correct orientation, of course, because then when you move one, or you turn one way and you turn the other side by the same amount, you're ending up with the same result on both sides. And all of that means is that in order to adjust this length means that you don't have to take or break the it's essentially a Morse taper joint on the end of the knuckle here. So this face in here inside there is actually what they call a Morse taper. So it's a diagonal, not diagonal, it's a slightly angled V shape, and that gives you that because you've got exactly the same shape on the opposite shape, I suppose, on the either on the steering arm or on the steering box drop arm, means that you get, and then obviously you tighten it up, you're holding it in place. It gives you a really strong joint, and the turning or the adjustment happens within the knuckle, not on that face. Anyway, look, that's it for this job. This job is now done. Obviously, I need to do the other arm, which is I won't film that. Of course, it's basically exactly the same thing repeated. And then, of course, when we get finished with our steering box, which will be hopefully in a video not too far in the future now, and we were able to put these back on, then we'll be able to show you all the stuff I've been blabbering on about in terms of adjusting the toe in. Anyway, listen, thank you for joining. Hope that this was informative to you. Hope that you guys are all having a great week, and of course we look forward to seeing you on the next video. So cheers for now.